This is Distant Replay.
Well, today's minisode, we're going to introduce you to Art Schlichter, a guy that I'm excited to learn more about because we just got done with a gambling documentary on Chris Carton, the radio host, and it kind of takes us right into this, kind of keeping the gambling theme going. And I don't know much about Art Schlichter, but Mike said, hey, look, I got a good idea for minisode as we're kind of talking about characters and people, and it has some criminal elements to it as well. So, Mike, let's talk about him. And I'm interested to learn more about him because why is it that you decided, hey, this guy is a good focus for the show?
Essentially, there's not many guys involved in sports who have like a 40-year track record of shady behavior. So I thought he'd be perfect.
Perfect. And by the way, yeah. I'm gonna mess up his name multiple times throughout the podcast, so you have to just deal with me on that because his name is spelled like it would be Schlichter, but
exactly.
It's Schlichter, right? Is that right?
Yeah, I thought my dad said his name wrong for 20 years. So Art Schlichter was the guy, the cautionary tale I used to hear about when I was a kid about like, don't gamble because you could end up like Art Schlichter.
That's hilarious. All right, so let's talk about him then. Give me his background, early life.
All right, he's born in 1960 in Ohio. Look, he's one of these guys during the Woody Hayes era of Ohio State football. He's a never lost a game in high school at Miami Trace High School, starting quarterback. He's just like a high school quarterback legend, right? He grew up like 40 minutes away from Columbus. So it's sort of like a foregone conclusion. You know, this guy's going to go to Ohio State and play quarterback. So that's what he ends up doing. Now we see signs of him getting involved in gambling when he's in high school. All right. There's a local harness track called Scioto Downs. He goes there during high school, pools money with his friends, right? And they actually, one of the first times they went, they won. So they pooled together money. I don't know if you've ever done this with your friends when you go to the track, but you pool together money, you make some bets for fun. And he happened to hit on one of them. And it sort of became a love affair between him and Scioto Downs, where he became a regular at the track, both during his high school years and his college years.
Okay.
So then we get into his career at Ohio State. He was a 4-year starter at Ohio State. He played for the last year of Woody Hayes.
All right.
And then he played for Earl Bruce for the remainder of his career, who I'm sure you know the name Earl Bruce.
Yeah.
Okay. He finished in the top 6 of the Heisman vote his last 3 years as quarterback. Sort of Ohio State peaked his sophomore year. They had a chance to win the national championship, but lost to USC in a close game in the Rose Bowl. But look, he had a great college career. He finished as Ohio State's leader in total offense. So, we're talking about a top-flight college quarterback, top-flight college program. But getting back to the gambling again, he's spotted several times hanging out with noted gamblers at Scioto Downs. Because remember, he's only 40 minutes away from his hometown. We see this a lot with guys who don't leave, sort of their checkered past behind, and they choose to go to college near their hometown. This is like a classic story in regards to that. The authorities notice him there with the gamblers. They even notice him there with head coach Earl Bruce.
Wow.
And which is crazy to think about now. That would never happen. It would later come out he lost several $1,000s during this time period at the track, but sort of because he's the Ohio State quarterback, because he's seen there with the coach sometimes, there's sort of a lid put on it, he never ends up getting in trouble or suffering any ramifications for it. And we both know from how we follow, the NCAA that this is like a major breach of their rules.
This is back then, though, when you could sweep stuff under the rug. I mean, a lot more obviously than you can now. When if he's out there, there's going to be Snapchats and Instagram pictures and tweets about him being at the track. So this is a completely different era where you could kind of escape and do these kind of things or be at the bar or wherever you were. And a few people might have heard about it. Word might have got around a little bit, but otherwise you can keep it quiet to pretty much 99% of the country.
Yeah, look, let's just put it plainly. This happens today, right? When it's a lot easier for things to get out. Imagine 1980s at Scioto Downs, when the only people who know Art Schlichter is there gambling is the people who are there, and they don't have anything to document proof,
Right.
So it's a lot more plot. If you think about it from that perspective, you can see how this stuff sort of manifests itself. So his professional career, he's picked 4th overall in the 1982 draft by the Colts. Okay. he actually lost his starting quarterback battle to a 4th-round pick. So he was picked in the 4th overall. Another quarterback named Mike Pagel was picked in the 4th round of the draft, and he lost the quarterback battle to this guy. What ends up happening that season is from September 20th through November 16th, the NFL is on strike. Okay. And this is really where, this is a young guy with a gambling problem, right? That's not yet really known about, that has free time on his hands. And it's the first time in his life he's ever had significant sums of money.
Yeah.
Right. So just a recipe for disaster.
Bad combination.
Listen to these stats. Okay. And not football stats, unfortunately, for Mr. Schlichter. By mid-season, okay, he had gambled away, all right, $350,000 signing bonus.
Jeez.
And by the end of the strike, so we're talking about, November 16th, he had at least estimated $700,000 in gambling debts.
Whoa, twice his signing bonus.
Yeah, and I guess what he used to do is he used to lose money. So let's say he lost $1,000. He would then immediately try to win that $1,000 back. So it just kept on multiplying over time and getting worse and worse and worse. Classic compulsive gambling behavior, right? From the winter of 82, so we're talking, that same year, winter of 82 to spring of 83, let's just say it was not a good season for Art Schlichter betting on basketball. Remember, we're into basketball season now. He loses an additional $489,000 betting on basketball. Now, this is not an era where athletes are getting paid a lot of money. He's probably doing a lot of this on credit, from a bookie.
That's a lot of money. Yeah.
At that point, the bookies are like, wait. You pay up or we're going to report you to the NFL, right? Like, this is enough here. Well, what the genius Art Schlichter does is he goes to the FBI, reports the bookies in March of 1983, and he gets the bookies arrested on federal charges. This is a heck of a year for Art Schlichter, man. We're talking like in a matter of a year from when he got drafted, he's losing huge sums of money. He's not even the starting quarterback on his team, and he's reporting bookies to the FBI.
and let's just say, too, for perspective, we hear $400,000, $500,000. It's a lot, right? But now, 2020 doesn't seem like a lot of money. Okay, just for some perspective, quickly looked it up. The average NFL salary in early 1982, was $90,000. So he was losing 5 and 6 times the average NFL salary.
That's bonkers when you put it like that. Art Schlichter, man, gambling on credit and then reporting to people he was gambling with to the FBI. So then in turn, of course, the NFL gets wind of everything and is like, well, you admitted to gambling, like a lot. So they suspended him indefinitely for gambling. He was the first NFL player to be suspended for gambling since 1963.
Jeez.
Okay. He ends up being reinstated for the 84 season, but he gets released 5 games into the 85 season. So he lasts the 84 season, gets released 5 games into the 85 season. And basically, this is pretty funny. The reason he got released was he started gambling on golf. So he would play someone in golf. He wasn't gambling on the sport of golf. He would like me and you, we go out and play golf. Hey, I'm going to beat you this round, right? He gave someone a check for $2,000 to pay off a gambling debt. And that person called the Colts front office to see if the check was good.
they couldn't trust him.
So then the Colts are like, well, you just got reinstated for gambling and now you're doing it again and you're not that good anyway. So we're just going to release you. So they release him. He has a brief tenure with the Bills in 86, but he's released also at that point. So to recap Art Schlichter's pro career, 13 games, 6 starts, 3 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, one of the biggest draft busts ever. I mean, remember, he was the number 4 overall pick.
4th overall. That's an incredible downfall. And a guy that was that good, I mean, you can tell that everything was just thrown off by gambling. I mean, I'm sure the guy was a much better player, but those kind of distractions, I can't imagine him being able to focus at all on football. With all the money that he owed, with the people coming after him, just always chasing those losses, like there was no other result besides failure in the NFL for him. Yeah,
like he played in the NFL, the CFL and Arena League, but never really stuck. In January of 87, he actually, so he had a chance. The Bengals wanted to bring him in 88 to back up Boomer Esiason. Okay.
Boomer. Yeah.
But Pete Rozelle blocked that move because in January of '87 he was arrested for his involvement in a New York City sports gambling operation. So Rozelle wasn't going to allow him back in the league. So that pretty much put the end to any chance he had of playing in the NFL. Now from '87 to '92, he gets into the bad check writing game, right? As a way to feed his gambling habit. He writes bad checks to the tune of $50,000. He's never put in jail for this.
Wow.
Right. Yeah. So you see a lot of this with celebrities, like they get away with it. They get away with it. They get away with it. And when they don't suffer consequences, they just keep on doing it.
Yeah. What's going to happen? Right.
Yeah. So he's really either released on probation or suspended sentences in all those situations. There's the thinking he wasn't put in jail because he's still a legend in Ohio. Right. He's still one of these legends and a good player at Ohio State, like we went through before.
Mm-hmm.
He moves. This is another classic Art Schlichter move. He eventually moved to Las Vegas to get help for his gambling addiction.
That's clearly the place you move when you need help with gambling.
This is in 1989. So real shock that didn't work out, right? So fast forward to 1995, he sort of ups the ante on his bad check writing scheme. What eventually lands him in jail is he forges $500,000 worth of checks in 3 states, Nevada, where he lived, Indiana, and Ohio, where he's from. He's sentenced to 2 years, served 16 months. Okay. So we begin sort of the downside where he's in and out of jail from basically November of 94 to June of 2006. He spent all but 358 days in prison during that time in 44 different local, state, and federal prisons.
Gee.
All different, either writing bad checks. He had a ticket selling scheme that didn't work where he took money from people on the promise that he would buy and resell like Ohio State tickets. He took money, $500,000 from people for that, including his father.
Man.
He pled guilty to that and spent 5 years in prison for that. So he gets out of jail in June 2006. He moves back in with his mother from 2006 to 2011. And remember, he still owes $500,000 in restitution at this point from the people he stole the money from in that ticket scheme.
Yeah.
He found a nonprofit during that time, a nonprofit anti-gambling organization. He wrote an autobiography. He started working at a local radio station, doing a radio show. So at that point, it looks like maybe he's turning a corner. If you're looking from the outside, if you're looking at it from the outside,
good sign.
Yeah. Like, hey, maybe Art Schlichter's figuring it out. He's addicted to gambling for, his
whole life, but
30 years. Maybe he's figuring it out.
Right.
Well, then you find out in 2011, Art Schlichter conned money out of, he had a relationship with the widow of a former Wendy's CEO. Okay. He knew this lady, Anita Vatko Barney, since he was a quarterback at Ohio State. Okay. Basically, long story short. So the Wendy's CEO she was married to died in a plane crash.
Like Wendy's, the restaurant.
Wendy's, the restaurant. Yeah. He was the CEO. He dies in a plane crash. She has a son who Art Schlichter visited in the hospital, like, star quarterback visiting a kid in the hospital. And she sort of credited that with her son getting better at that time. So she felt indebted to Art Schlichter. She, one of those kind of relationships.
Okay.
Well, he cons $1 million from her. All right. He used that money under the guise of he was going to start a ticket scheme and then use the money for gambling. All told, right? It turns out when Barney got wind that he, conned her out of the money, she wanted to be involved in the ticket scheme. Okay. She ends up cooperating with authorities, and that's how they got him on the latest charges he's in jail for. So basically, he's caught, sentenced to 10 years in jail for theft, wire fraud, and bank fraud in May of 2012. While he was on house arrest awaiting sentencing, he tested positive for cocaine. So he was immediately sentenced at that point to the 10 years. I guess 10 years was the most he could get. And once he tested positive, he was in jail. So Art Schlichter is in jail now. Okay. That's sort of where this odyssey sort of ends at this point. He's in jail now. So when you go from, let's say when he was a senior in high school, which would have been 1978, I believe, to 2012. So how many years is that?
40,
almost 35 years.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Almost 35 years of just different trouble this guy got in as a result of a severe gambling addiction.
His whole life, from the very beginning to now. I mean, it's been all just tragedy and gambling and mistakes. And you hate to, I mean, we laugh about it a little bit because some of the stories along the way are funny or humorous, but it is a tragic story to hear somebody with that much talent throw it away. And we see people do it all the time in different ways, but his method was gambling, and he had an issue that he could never overcome. And now he's not even doing that well in prison, right?
He's not. So he's been diagnosed with Parkinson's and dementia. And there's some thinking that, because of the concussions he suffered when he played football, that may be contributing to it. The doctors don't know because he's still alive, but they think he may have CTE. But as a whole, I'm glad you brought it up, because sometimes we joke around on these true crime episodes just to kind of keep things light. But it's important to remember Art Schlichter ruined his life with this. And, there were people that cared for Art Schlichter. Look how many chances he got, right? With the different ticket selling schemes, with people giving him a chance. And look, there's victims in that way too. People who, cared for him and were sort of let down at every turn. But just a crazy story how this is 35 years of this. I mean, just for Art Schlichter, it must have been exhausting going through all this.
A top quarterback prospect who had his life derailed by gambling and mistake after mistake. It's a tragic story, but one that we wanted to highlight here on Distant Replay as we look back over time, and these minisodes focusing on a person or a quick event or, a quick story. I thought this is one that was interesting to learn about, Mike, and I'm sure some other people were presented with new information for the first time as well, just like I was. So thanks for taking us through it. Is Scioto Downs still around?
It is.
It is still around.
So I need a clarification on how to say it. Scioto Downs. So I looked up Scioto Downs, and I caught some live simulcasts on YouTube.
Be careful.
It's in a casino. It's a part of a casino, El Dorado Casino in Columbus.
Okay. Yeah, if you're not in that horse racing world, it's an interesting wormhole to go down to see like these tracks that you have no idea about that are in these small cities or small towns or attached to small casinos or whatever it is. It's definitely a different world if you've never been into it.
Yeah, and harness racing in general is a different world, which is bonkers to think that what started this whole addiction to gambling was harness racing.
Absolutely. All right, let's call it a show on that note, Mike. Appreciate it. Again, you can find us on distantreplaypodcast.com, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. We'll be back again next week with a new episode, plus more minisodes still to come. So thanks for listening to Distant Replay.